What's up, people? Joe Winko here, your favorite Hawaiian guy, and here's my next episode of Joe Winko Talk. So, this is going to be a gloomy episode of Joe Winko Talk. Um, I've already mentioned this already, but this episode of Joe Winko Talk is going to be about how this psychic told me I was going to die out in a forest in North Carolina. And before I start talking about this, I just want to let everyone know that I finally realize right now that this is not going to happen because it turns out, as I explained earlier, that I'm not actually going to be ending up homeless this year because my adoptive parents are planning on sending me down south to live with relatives. So yeah, that basically throws this whole psychic prediction out the window. But anyway, I still felt like talking about this anyway for some reason. So earlier, I did an episode of Joe Winko Talk about how I would die if I became homeless. That's like of what would happen if I became homeless and I didn't have access to my insulin. That video, I'll have a link to it in the pinned comments, but what I was going to say was that's actually not how the psychic told me I would die. Although a lot of stuff I mentioned in that video, the psychic did describe seeing in her death vision she had for me of like my face becoming flushed and red and me becoming really sick and my eyes yellowing. That's actually not what how she said I would die out in the forest in North Carolina. She said I was going to be killed out in the forest by something. Not a living thing, but by a non-living thing. And I went to see the psychic back in April, like in early April of 2017, like the first week of April of 2017. There's this one guy who I met on Grindr. He's been watching my videos for a while, and he knew about how I was talking about how I might be ending up homeless because my adoptive parents aren't going to be getting me a new apartment after my lease expires. So he decided to go take me to see a psychic because he thought it might be funny if he took me to see one. So he picked me up from my apartment one night and he took me out on a long drive, and he took me to this house out in the northern side of Milwaukee. And I knew it was in the northern side of Milwaukee because we were heading north on I-94. And we went to this house, and right when we walked in, the whole house was like really dark, and it was lit by these purple and red lights and everything. And she was like sitting there right at the table waiting for us, like all smiling and everything. And then he paid the psychic, and then he walked out and left me in the room with the psychic. He said he'd be out in the car, and he said just come in the car when I'm ready to go. So he paid the psychic, and then he walked out and left. And then I sat down across from the psychic, and she said, "Hello, Joe Winko. I knew you'd be here." And I didn't even tell her what my name was. I barely even said anything to this psychic, but that's what she told me. And then she said that she wanted to see my hands, and then gave her my hands. She held my hands, and she was holding my hands for like, she held my hands, and then she closed her eyes. And she like just stood there like this, holding my hands with her eyes closed, like this. She did that for about 10 to 15 minutes, and I just sat there, like, waiting for her to do something. But then, after 10 or 15 minutes passed, she finally opened her eyes, and she gasped, and she was shocked and everything, and she looked right into my eyes, because she was sitting right across from me. She looked right into my eyes, and she had this, like, horrified look on her face. She was like this, like that, and she had this horrified look on her face. And then when I saw that look on her face, it looked really real. Like she actually saw something really creepy or something. So I didn't think it was a joke at all. Then she told me that I was going to die, and she told me I was going to die an extremely violent death. and she said I was going to get ripped apart by high winds. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I said, when does this supposed to happen? She said, it happens in October 4th of 2017 is when you die. You're going to die an extremely violent death, and you're going to be ripped apart by high winds. I still didn't understand what she meant by that. And I said, what do you mean? And then she said, the dead man walking will come take you away. And then when she said that, it just sent like these chills up my spine. And because I heard that term before, and I was just like, oh. And I knew exactly what she was talking about then. But I'll get back to that later. So then she explained what was going to happen. She said that what she saw was, she saw me walking out of my apartment late at night, and she was able to tell what the date was and what the time was because outside my apartment there's this sign. It's like this light sign that lights up, and it tells you what time it is and what the date is and what the weather is. And she said that the clock said it was October 1st of 2017, and it was 1 a.m. She said that she saw me walking out of my apartment, and keep in mind, when I went to see her, I was not wearing my bandana at all, and I had a shirt on, and I was dressed up and everything too. I was not wearing any of this though, and she said that she saw me walking out of my apartment. She saw me walking out of a building, which I'm assuming was my apartment. That's what she said. She didn't say it was my apartment. She said it was a building. Talking on my phone. She said I had a pair of red shorts on, and I was wearing shoes, and she said I had a red cone hat on my head, but I'm pretty sure she meant my bandana. And that I was talking on my cell phone, and I was talking that I was homeless now, and that I got an eviction notice, and that I'll be at the park soon, and to pick me up from the park at the baseball field. And then next she saw me walking over to a park near a baseball field, and she saw a silver van parked by the baseball field. She said she saw me getting inside the silver van, and the van drives away. But then next thing she saw was the silver van pulling over in this road that goes through a forest. And she saw me getting out of the back seat of the van, but I was wrapped in a yellow blanket and walking into the forest alone. And she said she saw these two road signs on the road. She said one road sign that said Virginia State Line, and another road sign that said North Carolina State Line. Then she saw the silver van drive away and leave me out in the forest. Now, when I heard that, this is why I believed her so much. So, I didn't tell anyone this. I never told anyone this, but you guys remember the necrophiliac story? I did a whole entire video on that, and I'll have a link to it in the description. After that happened, I kind of became, I don't know, it's probably because of my autism mind that I became so interested in this. I was fascinated by that whole necrophilia thing and everything. So I signed up for this necrophiliac site, and I was talking to these guys who were necrophiliacs and everything. But somehow it came to me, somehow they told me about a Satan worshipping site that I should sign up for, so I signed up for the Satan worshipping site too. And just letting you all know, I do not worship Satan at all. I just signed up for the site because I thought it was interesting. And when I signed up for the site, I started posting stuff about my personal life on the site, like about how I might be ending up homeless and everything, and how I don't fear death at all, and how I really hate Wisconsin and want to leave the state forever. Then this one man in his early 30s contacted me on the site, and he told me that he was reading all the stuff I was posting and that he really admires me. He said that he really admires me, that I do not fear death at all. He also admired me because I hate society and don't want to contribute anything to it. Well, that is kind of true, but the real reason why I can't hold a job is because it's too stressful and overwhelming because of my disabilities I suffer from, like autism, ADHD, and all the other stuff I listed earlier. But what he said was kind of true. and he understand it. He understood that I really hated Wisconsin and wanted to leave the state of Wisconsin forever, and that I definitely didn't want to be homeless there either. So he made me an offer, and he said that for since he admires me so much for not fearing death, and he said that I was a really brave and a really strong person, he made me an offer. He said for my last dying wish, he would give me a ride out to a forest in a remote and isolated region down south, out east, near the North Carolina and Virginia state line. And he said he'd give me a ride out there so I can leave Wisconsin forever if I ever became homeless and had no way to go. Because I would never want to be in an urban area if I was homeless, because they do messed up stuff to homeless people out on the streets. I would not want to be on the streets if I was homeless, because the cops harass them, and I always hear how people get beaten up when they're homeless and stuff like that, and how people play really mean pranks on them and everything. So I don't want to be in an urban area. If I was to become homeless, I want to go off far away in a place where I'll be by myself, because I'm not going to survive anyway, as I explained in that episode of Joe Winko Talk. So he told me he'd give me a ride down to this remote and isolated forest out in the middle of nowhere near the Virginia and North Carolina state line. I did not tell a single person that. I never told anyone that. I never told anyone that. I never mentioned that in any of my videos, not in any of my postings or anything. There is no way this psychic woman knew about that. There is absolutely no way she could have knew that, but she did. And she said she saw me getting out of a car at the Virginia and North Carolina state line, and that's what she said the sign said, and I did not tell her that at all. But then she said next what was going to happen was she saw me walking around the forest, and she said that she saw me walking through the forest and that I was crying and everything, and that I seemed like really weak and didn't have any energy at all. And then she said she counted that I was out in the forest for 3 nights by myself, and she said she saw me like propped up and leaning against a tree. She said that each day I looked more and more sick. She said that my face was really flushed and red, and my lips and my eyes were really flushed and red. She also said that my eyes were yellowing and that I was also puking up blood too. That's what she said she saw me doing out in the forest. She said that on the 4th day, however, that was the day that I finally would die. She said that she figured she didn't know if I was alive or dead at that point, really, because she said that my eyes were still open, but she said that my body was like quivering a little bit. And when humans are dying, that's one thing that the human body does. It starts quivering like that. But then she said what happens is it's like a storm starts, and she starts hearing thunder and lightning. Then she says she hears a loud crashing noise, and then she hears this wind, this really strong wind coming, and she hears it getting closer and closer. Then she told me, basically she explained to me that a tornado is going to start right out in the forest, and it's going to tear right through the forest, and that I'm going to be straight in the path of this tornado, and the tornado is going to come and kill me. That's basically what she described. And she said that, remember when I said earlier that she told me that the dead man walking will come and take me away? Where I heard that before, I knew she was talking about a tornado when she said that. But where I heard that before was back when I lived with my uncle in the Dominican Republic. My uncle and I, we'd always talk about random stuff from time to time. One time we were talking about tornadoes, and he told me the legend of the dead man walking in the tornado. And it's a Native American legend that they say that it talks of a dead man walking in the tornado. And they say if you see the dead man walking in the tornado, you are about to die. And then he showed me, we got on his computer and he showed me this picture. This one. You see that? It's really scary. That picture freaked me out when I was 12 years old. That's when I first saw it. But the reason why it looks like someone walking, it's because when there's a tornado, some tornadoes most tornadoes are multi-vortex. That means it's not just one thing spinning around in the tornado, it's actually several winds spinning around. Like there's horizontal winds that spin and there's vertical winds that spin. It's not just like one thing spinning around, it's like multiple things spinning around in the tornado. So that's why it looks like a person walking, because it's a multi-vortex tornado. Hope that made sense to you guys. Getting back to what the psychic said, she told me that she said I would be sucked up inside the tornado and that she saw me flying around in the tornado. And she said that I was going to be horrifically mutilated and disfigured by this tornado. And she described in detail exactly how I'm going to be torn apart and mutilated by this tornado. Okay, so first she said I was going to be picked up inside the tornado, and the first thing she said was I was going to be split in half at the waist down by a flying tree branch. Imagine a huge tree branch flying and hitting a human body, a skinny human body, at 200 miles per hour. Next, she said after that, she said that my right arm was going to be torn off by another tree branch, and after that, she said that my left hand and my left forearm were going to be sandblasted and skeletonized. Like all the dirt that the tornado is picking up, it's all going to fly at my right hand and at my left hand and my left forearm, and it was going to tear all the skin off. Imagine a whole bunch of grains of dirt hitting a human body, hitting a human hand at 200 miles per hour. That's gonna shred all the skin off. Then she said that she saw a rock was gonna whack me in the chin and whack me in the face and tear off my upper jaw and my lower jaw and my nose. And then she said next a stick was gonna be rammed and impaled through my head, through the back of my head and out my forehead. And then she also said that a lot of blades of grass were going to be sent flying through my body and everything, and a lot of blades of grass were going to be jammed in my body. And that's actually, tornadoes can actually do that, because a tornado can make straw or wood or blades of grass. They can send those through wood, and I heard that one tornado sent a paper card through metal once. That's what I've heard. And she said last my body was going to be thrown out of the tornado, and she said that 2 weeks later a bunch of hunters are going to find my body wedged between two broken trees, and that they have to use an aerial lift to cut me out of the tree. And she then said that my body was never going to be identified, and that I was going to be buried in a Carolina cemetery as a John Doe. And I was very curious. I asked her, what did my body look like when they found it? And she said that it was torn apart and it was horrible looking. But she said that it was still, I was asking her, how recognizable would I still be? And she said, well, your nose and half of your face was ripped off, like your eyebrows and your eyes are still there, and the bandana was still on your body, because she said a twig was going to be driven through it and that it was going to be stuck on my head. And she also said that my necklace was still going to be on the body too, but she said it was, by the time they find it, it's like really decomposed and everything, and it's only partially recognizable. That's what she said, quote unquote, partially recognizable. And then she said the last thing she saw was me waking up on a beach, and she's told me that she knew that this beach wasn't on Earth at all. She knew that it must have been in some afterlife realm or something like that. That's what she told me. She said she saw me waking up on a beach, and then she says this tall man was standing by me on the beach, and she says that I see this man, and he had black hair and blue eyes. And she said she saw me jumping into his arms and hugging him. And when she told me that, I was like, I knew right away who that was. She didn't know, but right away I knew who that was. She saw me being reunited in heaven with my uncle. That's what she saw. And that's everything she told me, basically. And then afterwards, like I left, I got in the car, and the guy who took me to see her, he kept asking me over and over again, "Oh, what did she tell you? What did she tell you?" And I didn't feel like telling him about it because I was really freaked out after hearing all that. And I've been thinking about this for the past 2 months, what that psychic said. And yeah, I was freaked out, but over time, I was happy that she saw me going back to heaven and being with my uncle again. But over time, I couldn't really keep that story to myself because I kept thinking about it over and over again. I don't know, maybe it was probably because it fascinated me so much and everything. So eventually, I told my adoptive parents that whole story, and I told them everything the psychic told me and about the Satan worshipping guy taking me to the forest when I become homeless and everything. And when I told my adoptive parents about all that, they were actually really freaked out. They didn't say much, but they just looked at me like this, like they seemed like really freaked out, and like they couldn't believe what they were hearing and everything, and they were like really freaked out, and they seemed a bit concerned. Then my adoptive mom told me, "Oh, well, Joe, you don't have to go out to that forest at all. We'll send you down south to live with my relatives. We'll just send you down there then." And then I was like, "Oh, you guys are?" Because they only mentioned that like very few times before this, but they said that they would send me down south to live with relatives. They at first they were just saying, "Oh, we might be able to," but now they said that they are going to. And I said, well, are your relatives down south? Are they really not gonna mind me moving in with them?" And they said they won't mind at all. They won't care at all, especially after hearing this. They won't mind. And then I was like, "Oh, well, okay." And I said all this while I was over at my adoptive parents' house one night. And then my adoptive mom asked me this. She told me, "Well, Joe, what are you going to do? Tell me this." This is what she said. "What are you going to do when we're not there to help you? And when you're completely on your own, what are you going to do then when no one's there to help you at all?" And then I just told her exactly what I was going to do here. I was going to get a ride to a forest in North Carolina because I didn't want to be on the streets when I become homeless. I wanted to be far away from everyone because I don't want to be on the streets when I'm homeless because they do messed up stuff to homeless people. And then when I told her that, she just went like this. She stared at me like, and then she goes like, she shook her head and she just goes like, "Yeah, sure, I'm sure you probably would." And then she told me to go home then. And then, and also after a while, I told the guy who took me to see the psychic, the one who I met on Grinder. I told him about what the psychic said because he called me on the phone and he said that he really wanted to know what the psychic said, and I just told him everything at that point because I didn't really care at all. And I told him that she said I was going to be left out in a forest in North Carolina, and that this tornado was going to hit, and that I was going to die in this tornado and be ripped apart by this tornado. But when I told him that, he actually started laughing, and he was going like, "Haha, tornado, seriously?" And then he said, "I could just see you there screaming your head off while that tornado's dragging you away, like the end of that Quarantine movie." And then I was just like, "What?" Because I was on the phone with him when he told me that. I didn't know what he was talking about, but I think he was like he said like that, like at the ending of that Quarantine movie. That's what he said. I think he was talking about this part of the Quarantine movie. Okay, so apparently he thought it was really funny. But I have one question for all of you guys. Could someone please tell me what is so funny about someone becoming homeless and being left out in a forest and then ripped apart and killed by a tornado? Can someone please tell me that? And I've been saying online a lot that that the psychic was told me I was going to die in the forest in North Carolina, and everyone was just telling me, "Oh, don't go to North Carolina then when you become homeless." And I was like, "Well, I might as well have, because I hate Wisconsin and want to leave forever, and I don't want to be homeless in Wisconsin, and the ride to North Carolina is my only way out of Wisconsin when I become homeless." But I'm not going to become homeless anymore, and I actually am going to be leaving Wisconsin after all without dying, so I'm happy about that. And also, because even if I was homeless, I would die either way, as I explained in that episode of Joe Winko Talk, How Did Joe Die? I'll have a link to it in the pinned comments. But overall, another thing is, I'm not going to go out to that forest right now. The only reason why I was going to be taken to the forest in North Carolina is because I thought I was going to be homeless, and I thought I would have no other place to go but the forest in North Carolina. But I'm not going to go out there right now. Not knowing, or in October when they send me to live down south with relatives, I'm not going to go to the forest in North Carolina, because I'd feel absolutely horrible walking around that forest knowing that I didn't have to be out there, and knowing that I could have just went to live down south with relatives. Now, if it wasn't for me going to live down south, I would have went to the forest in October. But even if the psychic told me a tornado was going to strike the forest and kill me out in the forest, because another thing is, she said I was going to be alive in that forest for 4 whole days without food, water, or insulin. Now, if I went 4 whole days without insulin and without food and water, I would be in such an extremely disoriented state by the time that tornado hits, that I would have no idea and not be aware of what was happening, and not know about what was happening. If I was sucked up inside a tornado, for all I know, I probably was dead by the time I was sucked up inside the tornado in her vision and ripped apart by it. And either way, with all those injuries she said I would suffer, I don't think I would have felt any of them. For example, see this? I'm not going to tell you guys how I got this scar, but this was like a deep slashing scar. I did not feel that when that happened. I think when a body feels like extreme trauma like that, like this scar or your arm being ripped off by a flying tree branch, I don't think you feel any of it, because it's destroying your nerves also. And I wasn't really afraid of that, though, but I am scared of tornadoes. They scared the hell out of me. They always scared the hell out of me. I remember one time when I was in elementary school. No, I was in middle school when this happened. 6th grade. No, 8th grade. It was after I came back from living with my uncle. And the teacher was talking to us about tornado safety and what to do when a tornado hits and everything. And then I asked a question. I asked the teacher, what would we do if a tornado hit while we were all playing outside at lunchtime? And then the teacher told us, you guys wouldn't be playing outside if the weather was bad enough for a tornado to hit. And then this one boy, he said, oh, well, Joe would. And then everyone started laughing at me. There was another thing, too. Back when I was a little kid, I used to have this nightmare. I never thought much of it until now, but I used to have this nightmare back when I was a little kid over and over again. Not that often, but I had it more than once. That I was running through a forest late at night, and I was being chased by this evil monster. And I never saw the monster, but I would hear it like roaring behind me and everything. And I'd hear it snap stuff and break stuff and pick up trees and throw them at me, and I'd see the trees landing in front of me. The trees would never hit me, but I'd see them like landing in front of me, and I would just keep running away from this monster. And I never saw the monster at all, but I knew it was something really big and really terrifying and really scary. But I never saw the monster at all. But then at the end of the nightmare, the monster would grab me. I wouldn't see it, but it would grab me, and then it would lift me up off the ground, and it would start flinging me around everywhere. And then right at that moment, I would just wake up. And I never thought of that dream until now. I never thought of that dream. I never thought much of that dream until now. And I think that the monster I was seeing in that dream, I think it could have been a tornado. I always thought it was some like beast or some dragon or some monster or something like that, but now I think it was probably some tornado. And another thing is, there's something else that's kind of scary about all this. After the psychic told me about all that, um, I went online and I looked up pictures of tornado victims and what they look like. Like, what do people who were killed by tornadoes look like? And I found a picture of one guy who was killed by a tornado. The scary thing is, he looks exactly like me, too. And here's his picture. I'm going to show it to you guys right now. Here it is. Alright, that's what he looked like after he was killed by the tornado. And the scary thing is, he looks a lot like me, too. The hair, the eyes, and everything else. So when I saw that online, that kind of freaked me out, but I wasn't afraid to die at all because I don't fear death. Because, as I said earlier, death is natural. It happens to all of us, and getting killed by a tornado, I can't imagine anything more natural than that, I guess. But, it still was kind of creepy hearing about that. I still was going to head out to the forest in North Carolina, but now since I know that I'm not actually going to become homeless and everything, and that my adoptive parents are going to be sending me down south to live with relatives, I'm not going to go out there anymore now. I'm not going to go out there. And also, another thing was, the psychic told me that this guy that she saw me getting out of the van at the forest wrapped in a silver blanket and that he was driving a silver van. No, I was wrapped in a yellow blanket and that he was driving a silver van. Another thing is, this guy who I met on the Satan worshipping website who told me that he would give me a ride to North Carolina, the forest out there. Another thing is, I met this man before. Me and this man met up before. We actually did meet at a park with a baseball field. I'm going to show you guys a video of the baseball field. When we met at the baseball field, at a baseball field park. And another thing was, he did drive a silver van, and when I met up with him, he had a yellow blanket with him, too. So, I definitely believe psychics are true. But, I'm starting to think maybe this woman wasn't actually a psychic after all. Maybe she just, when I gave her my hand, maybe she just read my mind and knew about the whole homeless thing and me running off, and maybe she looked way deep back inside my mind and saw that I had a phobia of tornadoes, and then she probably told me that a tornado was going to kill me out in the forest. So, in a way, the psychic woman, she actually kind of saved my life in a way. Because, if it wasn't for me telling my adoptive parents about this, that I was going to run off to a forest in North Carolina and get killed by a tornado, I don't think they would have sent me down south to live with relatives. I do not think they would have. Yeah, they mentioned it only a couple times before this, but I don't think they would have sent me down south to live with relatives. But nowadays, they told me that they're definitely sure that I'm going to be able to move down south and live with their relatives, and I'm going to be staying with them until I get approved for SSI and until I'm able to go out and live on my own and everything. So yeah, that's that. So yeah. In other news, by the way, my Sims 2 horror movie, Dead Route, I got tired of working on it, and I don't want to work on it anymore, so I'm going to be putting it on hiatus. But I'm going to be working on other Sims 2 stuff instead, and I'm going to try to do less gloomier episodes of Joe Winko Talk. So that's basically it for this episode of Joe Winko Talk, so don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, and don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget to like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. And that's it. So, peace out, people.